Namaste. Welcome to this episode of the Festival of Bharat with me, Pujita Krishna. I have with me today Shri Mandar Apte ji, an Indian American who spent 25 years in America, and he currently manages the not for profit Cities for Peace initiative that actively promotes peace, mental well being, and social cohesion in cities worldwide using Indic or Bharatiya wisdom of yoga and meditation practices. Prior to this, Mandarji managed Shell, the company Shell, their prestigious Game Changer social innovation program, investing in ideas that create shared value, business value, and social impact. While working at Shell, Mandarji won the League of Entrepreneurs Award for his work to facilitate an innovative learning program using meditation practice to over 2,000 colleagues. Mandarji produced From India with Love, a documentary film that promotes India's ancient message of non-violence. Aligned with this objective, Mandarji also hosted the World Summit on Countering Violence and Extremism, which brings together social justice activists and enforcement agencies to discuss novel ways of promoting peace. For nearly 2 decades, Mandarji has studied, practiced, and taught leadership programs using meditation practices for the Art of Living Foundation and the International Association for Human Values. Namaste, Mandarji. Welcome to our show.
Thank you very much, Pujita and Abhay and the whole team. I am a huge fan of your channel and work, and yeah, just an honor to be here to represent some of the work that I've been doing.
So, Mandarji, the work that you do, because you use the learning and the training that you have, especially in the traditional Indian or Indic practices of yoga and meditation, in resolving crisis like situations among various communities around the world. So it's a kind of like you're playing the role of an ambassador or a messenger, if you will, right, of the Indic value systems. And this is very pertinent, especially since India or Bharat is now being seen, or at least being promoted by Modi ji as a Vishwa Guru, because for many years yoga had been sort of what do you call it, the word is taken away by or appropriated by the West, without mention of the words Hindu or Hinduism, or acknowledging the Hindu roots of the practice itself. So it's very important that what Modi ji is doing is trying to assert that, well, yoga does come in his own way, in a very diplomatic way, that it comes from India, and all the associated practices have their roots in Hindu faith. So, keeping that in mind, I would like you to talk about the kind of work that you did for Shell, and what were the reactions you saw, and what was that experience like?
So, Pujita, just to set some context, I'm a chemical engineer by training, and I joined Shell in 1999, so a long time ago, in Houston, Texas. And workplace stress took a toll on me. So, a friend of mine recommended me to do the Art of Living meditation workshop in Houston. And my teachers were two white Americans, and they were teaching me, be in the present moment, yoga, meditation, pranayama, which I knew nothing about. And so it was kind of embarrassing for me that day. And so I committed myself that I need to study what my culture and civilization represents. And in 2 years, I became a teacher of the Art of Living Foundation, teaching Sudarshan Kriya meditation in Houston. And that year, there was a reserves crisis at Shell. So the leadership at Shell had wrongly reported the reserves on Wall Street, and they were fired from the board and the CEO position. So it was a very embarrassing time to say to people that you work for Royal Dutch Shell. So that is where the spark of application of the Indic wisdom of inner peace started brewing in my mind and heart. Because ethics or compliance cannot just be an online training, which most companies resort to. There's some technology, online software. You click, 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 and you get a certificate. So in 2004, we started an employee network within the organization to promote mindful leadership and the inner aspect of leadership, which often is not talked about. So when I was doing this work, this was 20 years ago now, long time before this mindfulness craze has come into America. And what I also realized, because I also became part of Shell's flagship program on innovation and investments, and I realized that innovation is not just a very technical process. Yes, you do need to have some technical knowledge, but it takes a village to bring your idea to the marketplace. So it is a very emotional and socio-emotional game, I would say, not just a technical game. Because sometimes you might have the best idea, but people don't support it because they don't like Pujita,
Right.
not because of the idea.
Correct.
So this training, socio-emotional learning, how to build relationships, how to story tell about your idea, is the opportunity I saw, and that is what I told my then boss, now friend, philosopher, guide, that we are investing Shell dollars in entrepreneurs, but if you want to create a culture of innovation, the mindset of innovation, it needs to start from within. And the adage that silence is the mother of creativity. Everybody knows it, right? And then we also say it's my gut feeling that this is a good idea. How do you invoke that gut feeling, right? And that is where I found the application of pranayama practices, meditation practices, to give the colleagues at the workplace a toolkit to improve the silence zone. Like, how do you get into that quiet time? And so the chocolate was the in Indic practices, yoga meditation practices. Wrapper on the chocolate was innovation and creativity. And so within 2 years, I was able to teach 2,000 people worldwide at Shell as part of my job. And that's an honor of my lifetime, like, to bring meditation and the benefit of meditation in a technical company like Shell, because Shell is not in the Bay Area. It is not in the Googles of the world, right? It's a very roughneck engineering company. So 2012 is when I realized that if you do it correctly, if your intention is good, then people need it. Yeah. So I still remember I was teaching one workshop in a Shell refinery in New Orleans, and these refinery operators, they were doing the workshop because um a slight mistake in such a workplace, stressed workplace like a refinery or an oil and gas platform, can cause multi-million dollar impact on the business line, bottom line. So if you want to improve the safety at the workplace, there is a term that is used, it's called behavioral safety. Like, how do you transform your behaviors? And that is where again the application of the wisdom of meditation is that it will help you transform your negative emotions into more acceptance, so that you can be in the present moment when you are taking some decision. So that is where I felt like, this wisdom came from, traditions and generations ago. But as custodians, we have to hold the sanctity of the traditions and use uh, the corporate training that we have to package it such that it is useful to solving problems at that time at the workplace. And stories were phenomenal. Like, one such story, very sweet story. One of my friends at work, a very senior lawyer at Shell, she said, Mandar, my daughter, at that time she must be 4 5 year old, she puts her Barbie doll to sleep using my guided meditation uh, CD that I had given her at that time. So when you bring certain things at the workplace, your intention is good, the benefits percolate even to personal life. And so at that time, Pujitaji, if you remember, like all these discussions that we have now in leadership development of self awareness, self mastery, authentic leadership, like none of this existed when we started this program at Shell. So, you allow the whole self to come to the workplace where you are encouraging people to bring their passion also to the workplace. And that requires you to be a more mindful leader. So that
So
was my
my
experience doing this at Shell 10 years ago. And if I can do it at Shell, you can do it absolutely in any workplace.
Sure.
Absolutely any workplace.
So when you mention mindfulness, right? So there is some amount of understanding because yoga and meditation have traveled to the West years ago, not now. They when there were Yogananda with Osho and so many people, but somewhere along the way these traditions have been hijacked, right, to some degree, where the distance of the practice from the origin has increased. And so today you find a lot of practitioners of yoga, they call themselves yoginis and gurus and all of that, and white folks, and I have to hand it to them, they do it very well. I mean, at least when it comes to hatha yoga, some of them are very good. But there seems to be a lack of understanding of the core principles, like the yama, niyama, the core principles of yoga seem to be missing, right? It's more about the physical aspect of yoga. And of course, I also wanted to mention the mindfulness technique, which was introduced by, I think, a gentleman, I forget his name, but he was an academician. Um, we talked about
John
him
Kabat.
earlier.
John
John
Kabat.
Kabat-Zinn. Yes. So very such techniques have come into the psyche and the popular lore and the jargon of the Americans. Did you ever face these situations? Because you've been practicing, you've been teaching yoga in the West for a long, long time, right? How do you even feel a need to counter it, or if you do counter it, how do you counter it?
So yes, these words did come in the vocabulary about a decade ago, and now it's like common language. People say, I practice mindfulness," or usually Americans will say, "Oh, I am so stressed, I need to go to my yoga class. 4 to 5 is when I lie down on my yoga mat and do shavasana and feel good." So that is where you do need to educate that yoga is a mental game. Yeah, so it is great that you are finding 4 to 5 p.m. yoga class, you're feeling good, but it needs to sustain for the remainder of the 23 hours also. And that is where it needs to be in your lifestyle, not just on your yoga mat. And the second thought I also encounter is mindfulness. So mindfulness is actually a complete misappropriation, because actually it should be mindlessness, where there is no mind, right? There is no mind. It is a space that you can say no thoughts is the space you get to experience. So mindfulness, and they call it mindfulness meditation,
That's right.
because they don't want to use the word meditation.
They don't
So
want to use the word, correct.
I don't understand it, and the way I explain to people who come to me with this I practice mindfulness is actually, when you are mindful, when you are eating mindfully, it's a lot of stress, whereas meditation practice is effortless. So you need to evolve. So mindfulness is good, but it's not the real deal. Yeah. So but everybody is going through their own evolution. Okay. So I feel like our responsibility is to stand for what we have been born in the tradition, and hold ourselves accountable that we also need to live and walk the talk. So whenever we are confronted, I think that is where we need to be also skillful in dealing with the confrontation, not avoid it, but skillfully deal with it, because you have to take the higher ground. You cannot go into these I'm better than you, you're better than me, because in the whole you lose it. That's not the game we are here to play. Yeah, we are here to evolve, and that means we have to play by our own rules. So
Right. Um, your film, you made this. I mentioned it in the introduction to your work. You've produced a film called India from India with Love. It's a documentary, and it's available on Amazon in the US and UK. And it basically showcases the India in a positive spirit, and the knowledge systems of India and how it can be used to solve problems and crisis and so on and so forth. So, can you talk a little bit about your film and what
yeah.
was the purpose behind making this film?
Yeah, so this film was produced in 2016 when the Trump election happened. One of my best friends, a Mexican American colleague of mine, was abused at a gas station in Texas. And so that is where I felt that, whatever I'm seeing on television, on CNN, Fox News, it's no longer limited to my television screen, it's coming at my doorstep. And so that was a key moment of truth for me that, man, there are so many violence events, especially I'm talking about the US scenario. There have been mass shootings, suicides, drugs. But did I do anything? No. Now it has come to my doorstep. My best friend has been racially abused. And so I picked up Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s autobiography that if I want to promote nonviolence, let me see how it was done. So while reading that autobiography, I was like pleasantly shocked because Dr. King, a legendary, American civil rights leader, has written 30 pages in his autobiography about his journey to India. As a young man, he had come to India when Gandhiji was dead, when Gandhiji was not alive. He has spent 5 weeks traveling in India, meeting with India's people, experiencing the culture of India, where at that time there was no McDonald's, there was no freeway, there was no Marriott hotels. So, usually nobody comes for 5 weeks. So I investigated what did he do here? Who did he meet? What was his learning? And that for me was the inspiration behind, can I recreate the journey of this legendary American leader, but using people of today who have been impacted by violence, whether it's gun violence, they have been perpetrating gun violence, racial violence, school violence. So that was my concept: is can I bring a delegation of American victims of violence from across the spectrum, and can we walk in the footsteps of Dr. King and meet with the culture and wisdom of India today? And if that culture of India is still alive, can it inspire America today? So that was the overarching goal of this effort. And it was one of the most humbling things I've done in my life. There are people in that film that just trusted me on a phone call, just like this, and I produced the film, and everything was finished in 1 month. From the time I read the book to finishing a 10-day journey in India with complete strangers.
Wow.
So that's where I also realized that, in India, we take many things for granted. But when you host people from any country for that matter, they will ask you certain questions which will make you also wonder, like, huh, interesting. Shall I give you one or two such experiences?
Please, please.
So we were in Ahmedabad. One of these trips that I bring before the pandemic, we have brought four such delegations. I had brought some mayors from across the United States, and
From?
we were from the United States, but mayors from different cities.
Okay.
And we were in Ahmedabad because I wanted them to experience the Dandiya program, Dandiya
Ah,
Ras Garba program, because we were during Navratri, we had planned that trip. And I felt like it would be good to show them women entrepreneurs. So I took them on the streets of Ahmedabad to buy those, beautiful, colorful clothes. And they are all shops on the street run by these indigenous
women.
women. And after we purchased all the clothes for the evening Dandiya program, This lady I saw behind her son, maybe 7, 8 year old boy. He was putting a thali and he was putting stickers of Ganpati, Ganesh, Lakshmi, and a lamp in the middle. So I asked her, Benji, ये आपका बेटा क्या कर रहा है? So imagine it's 12 in the afternoon, honking everywhere, hot. I'm asking this question to this lady. I was blown away by her answer. She said, हमारे गुजरात में ना देवी का बहुत मान है, तो आज नवरात्रि का पहला दिन है ना, तो हमारे यहाँ कहते हैं अतिथि देवो भव। तो क्या मैं आपके साथ ये जो गोरे लोग आए हैं ना, क्या मैं इनकी आज आरती कर सकती हूँ? Shocked. I told my US friends, the mayor friends, that this is our culture in India. We see divinity everywhere. Can she worship you today? And so they said, okay. So in the middle of the street, I saw her, and she was not looking for money. I thought she may be asking money. She said no. I think that day I realized that this experience that these American leaders got, I can bet on it, you can't get this experience anywhere else in the world. Well, maybe Nepal, I don't know, Bali, maybe Nepal, but here you will get this experience, and it is not dramatized, it's not scripted, it's unscripted.
True. What was
So
the
this is what
reaction of your the American, your friends?
these mayors, they are all intellectuals. I mean, they are all educated. And this is what we do at the end of every day during our trip. That MLK, Dr. King went through similar experiences. We don't know exactly what, similar. And he brought the wisdom of India, Ahimsa, in the civil rights movement. What are you going to do now? So, what did you learn today? What will you take back? So that day, I remember in the circle, in the discussion, that the debrief of the day, he said, what if we are able to see the divinity in each other, in our communities, where there is a lot of tension between black people and police officers, right? Violence in the schools. So, can we bring this flavor, this cultural aspect of India uh, through our some programs that we can create, educational programs where we are educating people about the need to see and respect the spirit in everybody else, right? So that is where it becomes an I would say humbling aspect that we are custodians of this culture. We may take it for granted. Same experience I had in that same trip. One of the mayors, he was autistic. He was on the autism spectrum, and at the end of 10 days, he asked me, Mandar, you, what is the word for thank you? So I said it's dhanyavad. So he said, I have never heard you say that word in 10 days. So, firstly, like what an observation, right? For 10 days, he's not heard me say it. So he said, why is that? And so I had never been asked this question before. So this is what came from me. Again, I am not scripting it. I said, look what happens now. Okay. So I called the rickshaw. The rickshaw wala came. I said, भैया होटल जाने का कितना लोगे? तो वो बोला 400 रुपये लेगा. मैंने कहा क्या भैया क्या बात करते हो, आते वक्त हम लोग 300 में आए थे, 300 में कर दो. तो बोला नहीं नहीं रात का टाइम है, 350. आई सेड ओके ठीक है, फाइनल डील डन. हम लोग बैठ गए और फिर मैंने मेयर को बताया कि देख, मैंने उसको क्या बोला भैया, उसने मुझे क्या बोला भैया.
Yeah,
सो हम लोग ऑलरेडी वी हैव मेड अ रिलेशन,
right.
right? So when you have that social relation,
You
social
don't keep
connection,
on saying
you
thank you.
don't need to say thank you or
Correct.
please,
Or
right?
like
So
we don't keep saying I love you to our wives and our husbands every
and
time.
you know Mother's Day, like if you say mother I love you, my mother will give a japad to me,
Exactly.
right? And you know how these mayors take this back. Like few months later, this young mayor from a suburb, a small village in near Atlanta. He had taken his girlfriend out for Indian food because he had become fond of Indian food, and he had started liking thumbs up because you don't get thumbs up there, right? You get Coke.
Right.
So he had sent a picture. He had texted me that night from his date, the bottle, the
Hmm.
thumbs up bottle, and written to me "Dhanyavad."
Oh, so sweet.
Yeah. So, these are memories that are etched in your mind, right? These are, and something similar has to have happened with Martin Luther King Jr. Because if you remember at that time, sadly, they were called the N word, right? And so imagine somebody with that kind of trauma, judgments, whatever labels, is welcomed in the villages of India and received like this. What would have happened? His heart chakra would have been smashed. You would have seen that, wow, they are treating me as a fellow human being. And so that is where the name of my film is called From India with Love. Because I felt that Martin Luther King actually brought love from India, right? And Ahimsa is nothing but love, right? Ahimsa. Himsa is violence. Ahimsa is a lack of violence. So lack of darkness is light. So lack of violence is love, unconditional love. And so that is what I feel we are again blessed to be born in this culture, blessed to be custodians of the culture, and at a time when the world needs it.
Obviously, your organization, which is called Cities for Peace, is obviously aiming to create this kind of spirit among people, right? Which is the basic idea behind non-violence or ahimsa, which we will talk about a little bit. Um, so if you could talk a little bit about the inspiration behind why you felt the need for establishing this organization, Cities for Peace, and when you are working with people through this organization, groups of people, what are the core philosophical ideas from the Indic or Bharatiya Sanskriti that you draw from? Because even non-violence, we know that we are not completely in the sense, a lot of people tend to think that non-violence means just be peaceful and never do anything wrong, never lift a weapon. So we know that's not true, because Bhagavad Gita is about Bhagwan Krishna is telling Arjuna to fight. So could you talk about the core philosophical ideas and how do you reconcile this idea of
Yeah.
non-violence vis-a-vis the Indic idea of dharmic violence, and you take up violence when it is dharmically right? So if you could just throw some light on that.
Yes, it's a very profound question, and also part of my own discovery during this journey. So, what happened is the police chief of Los Angeles uh, hosted the premiere of my film, the From India with Love film, and they invited me to Los Angeles, and we had a beautiful screening that the city of Los Angeles hosted. There were about 450 people at the Paramount Theater studios. And I led a meditation at the end of the screening. And I got a Medal of Honor. I got a badge from the LAPD. And then the police chief said these words. He said, looking at the audience, he said, "Your film is great, right? What you saw is transformation of these victims of different spheres of spectrums of violence, but we can't come to India with you. We all can't come to India with you. Can you bring India to Los Angeles?" So for me, I was so proud that day that this is a invitation from the largest police department in the world to kind of bring the wisdom of India to help them solve their problem of gang violence in Los Angeles. So I relocated to Los Angeles, and I told the chief of police that I have something unique, an idea that needs your air cover to bring it to life. Like, I will do all the legwork. And here was the idea. The idea was LA is known as the gang capital of the world. This is where gangs have been born. So drugs, etc., etc. It's known for it. Of course, it's also known for Santa Monica Beach and
Of
Hollywood.
course, the other
But
side.
the other side. There is one homicide, murder every day, almost. So, what I told the chief of police is, can we bring people from the gangs and the LAPD cops and the victims of gang violence? So, these are opposite stakeholders.
Right.
They are seemingly opposites. They don't have anything in common. They don't come and have Starbucks together, right? They don't chit
Right.
chat. So, I said that is where I would like to use the wisdom of India to bring them together. Okay, so what is the spirit of them? Why are they coming together? Because all of them are and must be traumatized. Because violence, even if it's secondary violence, will leave you with trauma.
True.
And so he liked the idea, and that's all you need. So I walked on the streets of Los Angeles South Central. I met with the gang leaders because you can't do any work in those communities until the gang leader says आ जाओ, right? It's like इधर अपना
Oh,
भाई भाई होता है वैसे सेम है. तो मैंने वो गैंग लीडर को उस दिन बोला कि मैं इंडिया से आया हूँ और मुझे लोगों से बात करके ये समझा है कि योर कम्युनिटी इज ट्रॉमेटाइज्ड. यू नीड टू मैनेज योर वेल बीइंग. इफ यू डोंट, do you have problems about blood pressure, diabetes, and he said yes, of course. So I said, I'm going to teach you something. I taught him Bastrika pranayam that day, and I said, how was it for you? His reaction was, this was good. Okay, so he said it. I said, Andre, if you can practice this for 5 days, I will take you for Indian food on the 6th day. Call me. He called me. And he said this has been very powerful for him personally, and sees it now why his community will benefit from it. So that was the day when I felt a breakthrough. Okay, so perhaps it has never happened in American history before that former gang members, victims of gang violence, school teachers, and the LAPD cops, we brought them together in a 2-month boot camp on yoga meditation practices. Okay, and so what happens when you do Sudarshan Kriya, when you do pranayama, when you practice yogasana, is you start feeling healed naturally. Why wouldn't you? And when you heal, compassion automatically arises from your heart, right? Because compassion, peace, love is your nature, kindness is your nature. It's blocked because of the trauma. So at the end of 6 weeks, I asked them, how many of you would like to be teachers of this? And everybody raised their hand. So that is where I taught them how to teach a little bit of pranayama, little bit of wisdom of non-violence. So perhaps for the first time in Los Angeles history or American history, we have brought seemingly opposite stakeholders in one room and did a boot camp on yoga meditation practices to unite them in their heart and mind to start with. Yeah. So at the end of the program, these police officers as well as the gang members, they expressed an interest to learn how to teach in their community. So I also shared with them how they can teach simple pranayama practices and still make a difference. This
right.
program was then repeated 2-3 times in the city of Los Angeles, and that is where the name Cities for Peace was born. Because
Right.
ideally, the city has all these stakeholders. They think they are seemingly different, but they are living in the same neighborhoods. They're facing the same challenges, right?
Right.
So, can a city stand for peace? And the cornerstone of our program is, the ancient wisdom of India that When you are traumatized, you're less likely to see the other as a fellow human being, right? So you are because you are traumatized, you are stuck in your own pain. And so to unstuck yourself, usually we are stuck in events, either events of the past or events that might happen in the future that create anxiety. So the cornerstone of the program is that if you want to unstuck yourself from the event, the traumatic event experiences, then there is a universal science that every emotion in your mind has a corresponding breathing pattern. So when somebody is angry, when somebody is sad, when somebody is happy, so this is the science that if you want to transform your emotions, you can do it. You can empower yourself by learning breathing exercises to do it yourself. Yeah, so that is the cornerstone, is give them the series of exercises, sudarshan kriya, pranayama, and yogasana practice. Why are they doing it? Because it is helping them release their trauma. Yeah, release their trauma, and it's an experience that you don't have to practice for 6 months. Immediately at the end of the session, you are going to feel good. And if you do that for a few days, you're going to feel a new person. So that science is the cornerstone of our programs, is the wisdom of the rhythms of the breath, of how using your breath you can manage your emotions. Why do we need to learn how to manage our emotions? Otherwise, the emotion makes a slave out of you. Because of the traumatic incidents, the anger, the pain, the sadness, the blame or guilt, these are very heavy emotions, and they cloud your intellect. They make you suffer, you can say. So as Sri Ravi Shankar ji says that pain is inevitable. As long as you are born, you are in pain. Suffering is optional. And that is where the mind science, like how do you handle your mind, is why people have been coming to India for lifetimes, right? That is where you are going to discover how to get over your mind. And that is the first aspect of the program. The second aspect of the program is again India's wisdom of harmony in diversity. So, can you live in harmonious coexistence? Which is where you need to not tolerate the other, but have mutual respect. Because tolerance is also like, okay, I'm tolerating you, Pujita, but inside me, inside me. Yeah, so whereas when you transform that tolerance to mutual respect, then I respect you for who you are, if you respect me for who I am. That is the pillar of India's civilization, I would say. Right, so this is what the program builds the consciousness through, of course, interactive discussions, through group processes, through some games. Because dharma, or what is your duty, is universal. When you realize it, you realize it doesn't matter where you are, right? That is why our tradition, culture, civilization is universal, is it applies to absolutely anybody. And so my conviction is that if I can do this in the gangs of Los Angeles to bring them in harmony with the police officers, they're complete opposite, we can absolutely have the conviction that we have the knowledge of how to do it anywhere in the world. Right? All we need to do is find the secret sauce of how do you hold the space, holding the space where you are not judging each other's trauma. I'm not saying my trauma is $50 and your trauma nothing, it's $5. As long as we keep that aside, this tradition or wisdom can help heal the trauma. And when trauma is healed, compassion is right there. And you experience it as an artist yourself, right? After a beautiful performance, right, the crowd is mesmerized. They are in that state of wow. Yeah, so that's where I feel the Cities for Peace is just a branding where we are promoting the Indic philosophies of wisdom, of yoga, meditation, and like I said, human values, respect, caring, sharing. These are human values. And now our programs are in multiple cities in the United States because,
Tell
as you
tell
know,
us
violence
about
is everywhere.
you've spoken about the program, which of course is your, I would say, like you said, this program that you did in LA was one of those never done before kind of programs. Can you give us examples of other programs that you've done? Maybe you mentioned Cyprus also, right?
Yeah, so the pandemic, actually, the silver lining of the pandemic is the whole world is online. And so you can absolutely be anywhere and be a messenger of good anywhere else in the world. So, sitting here in India, where I relocated 3 years ago, all my work has been in the United States. So, as you may remember, there was a black man that was murdered in the beginning of the pandemic, George Floyd, and it created a huge social unrest. Many cities went in turmoil. So, because I had done the street work in Los Angeles to bring police and community members in harmonious relationships, we were invited, Cities for Peace was invited by many communities to bring this kind of philosophy in helping their city stabilize. So we have done our work in Seattle, Minneapolis, in Rochester, in several neighborhoods. But last year, 2022, for me was another like feather in the cap of Cities for Peace work. Is the United Nations also brought our program in a conflict region in the Middle East called Cyprus. So, Cyprus has an ongoing conflict between Turkish Muslims and Greek Christians because there was a war 50 years ago. And there is a very healthy presence of the United Nations peacekeeping force in the middle of the island that divides the island into the northern part, which is affiliated with Turkey, mostly inhabited by the Muslim population. Southern part affiliated with Greece, habited by the Christian community. So the United Nations invited this program to help the victims, the survivors of the trauma of the war, and the harmonious coexistence. Like, can we come together as a civil society? And so that was where we did this programming with women from both sides of the divide. So, women leaders who are running NGOs, who are school teachers, who are doctors, musicians, performing artists like you. Um, so, we brought them in an online space. And again, the programming is the same: one, breathing meditation, Sudarshan Kriya, yoga exercises, healing the trauma. Second, can we be messengers of peace? Can we learn how to be in harmonious coexistence? And the way we did it is one person from each side has to collaborate in sharing the wisdom they have learned in the first phase through a creative expression, right? So some people organized a music concert together. Some people hosted play dates for children of both sides. Then 14 musicians came together, seven on each side, and rendered a performance. So that is where, peace is everybody's calling. We are all looking for peace. But in the material world, we are looking for peace outside. And as we know in India, that is the wrong place, right? The real peace is our nature, is internal peace. And that is where I feel like we have to stand up for it. That if you look at the funding that goes for peace building, peacekeeping operations, USAID, DFID, United Nations, huge amounts of money is spent. But if you look into the cookbook of what these programs are doing, inner peace is not in their vocabulary, also, right? They don't know about it. So that is where we have to stand up for it, that adding this element of inner peace can make these programs more effective. And so actually learned this year that India, through the leadership of the Indian Army, we are sending massive Indian Army personnel in many. We are sending Indian Army personnel in various conflict zones in the world,
Yes,
like
South Sudan, for example.
Sudan,
Yeah,
Ivory
yeah, yeah.
Coast, and also army generals from these violent and fragile states are also coming to India to learn how to demine, how to handle terrorist attacks. They are doing workshops with our Black Hat commandos. So if you look at even that cookbook of what are we actually training, even our soldiers who are going as peacekeepers, that is a huge opportunity to add this element of inner peace building to make their life safe. Because see, anybody who goes in a conflict zone, you cannot but have secondary trauma, you cannot but have secondary
Correct.
stress. And so just purely from an economic point of view, because secondary stress means you need psychological consulting, you're off duty, right? So all these things can be avoided by giving people some tools for the prevention of that trauma. And peace building is where you are actively training, just like I train gangsters in LA.
Right.
You can actively promote peace, inner peace. So I think there is an opportunity for standing up, because this is also the soft power of India. Usually
Yes.
soft power is associated with music, Bollywood, dance,
True, true.
but
Bollywood.
the wisdom of the mind, and how to handle the mind is a strategic soft power that I hope we are able to bring that to institutions like ICCR, various ambassadors that are in different parts of the world.
Yeah.
Because today violence has cut across the world, right? It doesn't look at skin color, it doesn't look at our bank balance, it can happen anywhere. So countries like France, Germany, Sweden, Denmark, UK, the Leicester riots, only when we are proud about, hey, this is our culture, this is our tradition, and inner peace is the only way to sustainable peace. When we are crystallized in this, right, that hey, this is true, only then we will take pride and ownership for it. So that is where I hope that our bureaucrats in different countries also think about how they can promote the wisdom of India as a solution, as an enabler to the peace in the country that they have now chosen to live. Same true with the diaspora, right? Because sadly, now, at least I can speak on the American context. Our diaspora is in every city, Pujita, every city in neighborhood. We cannot stay away as a bystander to various types of violence, including school violence. We
True.
cannot say, अरे मेरा हम तो gated community में रहते
Doesn't
हैं
come.
बाबा.
हाँ, it doesn't concern me.
हाँ,
हाँ.
हाँ, हमारे पास तो ये नहीं आएगा. You are mistaken. And that is where later on we may repent that अरे मैंने कुछ किया ही नहीं. So be an active proponent, just like you promote trade and economy and Bollywood films and whatever Garba dance. Don't forget inner peace, education.
So, you've been doing work outside of India with communities which are, which are facing some kind of crisis in terms of violence or wars, etc., etc., or gang leaders, gang wars, etc. So that's a kind of work that you've been doing. My question is with respect to what about communities within Bharat that have for years, and you know what I mean, right? Of certain religious communities which have been having off and on, I won't say throughout history, but definitely off and on, there have been conflicts. And this is definitely a burning problem. Do you think that your technique or your approach, and it's not yours, it is of obviously the Indic wisdom of, all the ideas that you bring in through yoga, meditation, etc. Can this be used to resolve the problems within these communities? And I mean the Hindus, who are obviously the the custodians of this land and its values and its basically the products of the Sanatan Dharma vis-a-vis the others. And I don't want to call them others in the process of, in the manner of othering them, but they're also part of this land. But there has been a history of violence between these communities. Do you think that this can be resolved? These kind of long-standing problems, can they be resolved through this kind of work?
100%, no doubt in my mind at all. And now that I'm in the peace rabbit hole, I feel a few things need to be done, not just at a community level, but at an individual level also. Trauma plays a huge role in the shaping of your hearts and minds. And lack of managing the trauma is something where we have to put more attention on as a community also, because there have been the trauma of the partition is huge. We never addressed it, right? The trauma that has happened in 1984, 1948, and continues, we have not addressed it. And trauma is also, through neuroscience and the discoveries of modern science, it also becomes intergenerational. Like, you are carrying the trauma in the genes, in your DNA from the previous generation. And this science is out there. I'm not making it up. It's there. It's called intergenerational trauma. So, and what trauma does is it perpetuates, right? So, in the context of the LA gangs, I murdered your family member because your family member looked and hit my son's friend, right? So it's intergenerational. Even in Cyprus, the women in Cyprus also said the same thing. Like, at some point we have to stop. We have to say, trauma stops with me. I'm not going to pass it on to the next generation. So, with that, I feel we have to learn a little bit more about this trauma science, knowing that the solution, the wisdom of how to overcome it is there in our tradition and culture. And in order to like test whether my work is also relevant in India as well, I got myself invited to a local dargah. And I got myself invited to a local dargah in the madrasa. And I taught 20 women in burqa and 20 men the exact same practices I teach in Los Angeles South Central. And I was also pleasantly shocked of how it was received. And today, who is not stressed, Pujita? Just ask yourself, whether you're a CEO or whatever, the bus driver, anybody in between. The common denominator is we are all stressed. And this building bridges or building harmony, we cannot leave it to the politicians, we cannot leave it to the media channels. It has to be a civil society driven effort. It has to be civil society, because an eye for an eye cannot be an answer. And we are all one. Like, at least in America there is a tension between the blacks and the whites, but here, if you look at each other, we are the same, right? Few generations before, we were all the same. So I think that is where
But
I invite
Mandarji,
people. Yeah.
I'm sorry to interject again, but this is a very contentious issue. We tend to look at it that way, and when I say we, I mean the Hindu side has always had that. Even in our conflicts with Pakistan, we've always been the one that has always extended a hand of, offering peace, whereas it's never been reciprocated. So there is, I don't think this conflict that we face in Bharat is something that can find a parallel anywhere else, because we are faced in a unique situation where I don't think we are caught in a cycle of revenge. It's just that we are in a stage right now where we want to assert ourselves, and that is being resisted by certain forces. The assertion of our identity is being resisted because for a long time we didn't do that. So that is a problem. So my question is, can you fight, or not fight is not the right word, but can you counter a mindset that is so set against you, that has a problem with your identity itself? The fact that you are not in Abrahamic religion, the fact that you are a Hindu, is a problem by itself. So I know this is a bit of a challenging area, but I think it needs to be brought up because that is the core problem here. A problem is not that you did something to me and I'm doing it back to you. That would be unfair to the Hindu side, because that's not what we're doing here. I don't think that is what our history will even tell you. But so yeah. So do you think we can, with these kind of resources at hand, the kind that you've been speaking of, can we counter this mindset of a group of people who don't even want to accept you because of who you are?
See, I think your question I have already answered. My answer is yes, because what I am offering, inner peace, is the need of the hour, cuts across all kinds of socio-economic demographics. Okay. The second is, if I don't have the conviction of the power of my knowledge, my wisdom, my lineage, if I don't have that conviction, then you will of course be at a like, nahi ho sakta hai कि nahi ho sakta hai. But I have crossed. I'm saying it is universal. So having that conviction is what I tested. I did it. If we can do it, every community needs it. And that is why I repeat again, civil society has to step forward and do it. Professors, doctors, engineers, businessmen, because see, violence cannot be responded by more violence. Because we are all in it together, an eye for an eye cannot be the answer. It's not sustainable. So, with the boundary of law, right? Okay, you cross the boundary of law, then there is another place where this needs to be done. But why do we want to go towards that? Proactively, we can go and create these harmonious coexistence, peace workshops, and bring everybody together, because everybody is looking for the same thing. Civil society. Remove all the political edges out of it, remove the media spin out of it, and you go to the human being. And I would say also, don't ignore the fact that survivors and victims of violence, they need our attention. So for example, the fathers of these stories that we are hearing recently, right? I would love to help the parents
Who are you
who
referring
have
to?
gone, the women who have been
Radicalized, the Kerala story, you mean?
not well, yes, could be them as well, because at some point of time, coming back to civil society for anybody who has experienced trauma is not easy. जस्ट उनको जॉब देने से कुछ नहीं होता है. लाइक इकोनॉमिक डेवलपमेंट इज व्हाट द वर्ल्ड डोनर प्रोग्राम्स आर फोकस्ड ऑन, राइट? Economic development, women development. So this bug has caught on to India's CSR programs also. But if you look at holistic development of the women, just giving them tailoring training or computer training, yes, it gives them income, but does it mean they have overcome their trauma of domestic abuse, of whatever abuse? No. I think that is the opportunity for civil society to contribute. And it's not just meditation science, yeah. So that is where the wisdom of the dance science, nritya, the performing arts, like, it has to be a medley, a platter of solution, because that is where it is a holistic upliftment of that person, right? And today maybe meditation is not my cup of tea, but if I learn how to sing, or if I am exposed to classical music, I can heal myself. But we have not educated ourselves that there is a healing power to the performing arts. And I think that is where our civilization has to stand up for it. Nobody else can do it. We have to do it.
I agree.
For that, we have to know what it is. Only then we'll be proud about it.
Tell us about your future projects. What is on the in the pipeline?
Um, there are two, three projects. One is I'm still very committed to the schools in the US that are being affected by gun violence. And so I've converted my documentary film into a peace education module. The reason I've done it is usually, what happens in the United States is mass shootings, they happen. There have been 200 plus so far this year. Good people stay as a bystander. We say, अरे यार अच्छा नहीं हुआ, but मैं क्या कर सकता हूँ? I think that is where the module that we have made can be a resource for a parent to say, I can't do much about the violence, but I can promote peace education in my child's school. Right? So this becomes a tool, a resource that we have developed. And recently, 200 police officers in Seattle participated in this module training. And now the module is agnostic, so it's not just about bringing it in school education. You can also bring it in your own office because of racial diversity, this equity, this inclusion, or lack thereof, is what the module is promoting. Stress management, people, if you want to bring stress management the Indic way, this module can help you bring and catalyze that dialogue. If we don't do this as an Indian community in the diaspora, if we don't do it, mindfulness, as we talked at the beginning of the conversation, is already percolated in the vocabulary.
True.
Right? So that is where this module is the way for us to scale the wisdom of inner peace. And the second top of my mind is inviting others to collaborate, including you, because there is some science in your arts also that we can add to the medley of the Cities for Peace programming, so that we are giving to the affected population what is on a platter. So I'm looking for, people who will watch this, and after you watch the Cities for Peace website and work, if you like it, and if you have something to contribute, please do reach out. And if you think we can bring such a program in your community, also reach out. We can co-create something.
Right. That's wonderful, Mandarji. Thank you so much for giving us your time. And this is what you do is indeed unique, because I think for me the key takeaway from this entire conversation has been the fact that what you said about building a soft power for Bharat. We need to build a brand, and everybody knows, everybody does, around the world associate India with wisdom, ancientness, antiquity, etc. But we haven't been able to, for want of a better word, market or promote it as soft power, which is the need of the hour. And I think people like you with your work, which is meaningful, which is relevant, which is required, but I think is important because it builds, it goes a long way in building that kind of. I think we need many Mandarjis who use different kinds of, different aspects of our culture. Like you said, the knowledge systems. It's not just meditation. It's not just yoga. There is music. There is dance. There's textiles. There's so many things that we have, which and every knowledge system comes with tremendous amount of wisdom with it. So yes, all of it needs to be deployed, and it needs to be put out there so that people will start viewing us in the way that we need to be viewed, as the Vishwa Guru that I think Modi ji wants to see us as, and which we are indeed and have been for millennia now. So,
Yeah,
would you
in
like to
the
add something? Yes.
just one or two things, just in the language of the American basketball, you can play a defensive game or you can play an offensive game, right? So when you are defending, I'm not saying don't defend. You have to defend, but there is a plethora of tools of knowledge that we can use in the offensive game proactively,
Yes.
right? And that creates such a powerful human connection. Like for example, the first batch I told you, the gang leaders in India, in Los Angeles, they became vegetarian.
Who? I'm sorry, I missed that.
The first cohort that I taught
Yes. Oh, they
of
became vegetarians.
gang. And if I can extrapolate, there is a lot of awareness about India today, through our food, through our films, that we should not be shy to represent the culture of inner peace and the wisdom of inner peace. If we don't, then we will be hijacked.
That's what. Yes, that's the fear.
Yeah, because America, at least, again I speak for my life in America, there are yoga studios in every city, in every corner of large cities, and most of the yoga teachers are sadly not from an Indian origin.
Exactly.
So and we need to believe that yoga is not just about health, it's not just about well-being. It is about a mental game. Like I have shown through my work at Shell, it can help in the innovation aspect, creativity aspect, peace building aspect, conflict resolution aspect. And finally, I will just answer one question. You can add it to the end, to the beginning. There was a question you asked me, a very nice question. It was about our dharma, and if there is violence, should we say non-violence? Remember that question?
Yes.
So you can add it if you like the answer to that part of the question when you asked.
We
So
can keep it where it is. That's fine.
okay. So
Yeah.
basically, there was a workshop I was doing with the Washington DC Police Department, and I led them through a meditation. They did pranayama practice, and one of the sergeants in that blissed out state, yeah, he was blissed out, and he said, "Can I ask you a question?" I said, "Yeah, go ahead, officer." So he said, "Are you advocating that we don't carry our weapons?" And I said, "No, no, 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 don't misunderstand me. Don't misunderstand me. Because if you, as a police officer, are not there for my security and safety, I will be in trouble outside." Right? So that is where the actions that you do to protect and keep communities safe, you have to have the law determine what you should do. That is your dharma as a police officer. Where does the wisdom and the work I taught you help you? And he answered that question that day. He said, "It gives me inner peace and clarity of what I should do." And he said, "Yes, you got it." So, inner peace doesn't mean sit at home and meditate and let the
Not do
world go
anything.
boil. No, not at all. You should absolutely not have this at all. And
Right.
today we need to do both. It's the time is we have to invoke both.
Yes.
Skillful kshatriya, I would say
Yes.
kshatriya, but different ways of being kshatriya, right?
Yes.
Sword is part of the kshatriya toolkit, and so is the pen, and so is our thoughts, and so is our
Vak.
arts.
Vak. Yes.
Yeah.
Right. So on that note, I think you're right. The key point here is building our soft power, promoting it. Idea is not that there are times when you need to pick up a weapon and fight, and that's what dharmic the idea is that you do it dharmically, right? Or you fight for dharma or for the righteous cause, not for what is not what is adharma, right? So that is what it is about. And
And at one of these lieutenant colonels in the Indian Army, who is my well-wisher, my student also, he was saying to me that Mandarji, आप जो सिखाते हैं ना, वो आप सिखाओ, क्योंकि उसके बाद भी कोई ट्रांसफॉर्म नहीं हो गया ना, तो हमको मारने में कोई दिक्कत नहीं है, कोई डाउट नहीं है.
right, right,
So he said your work compliments, because you do it, and at the end, boundary of law. If you break the law, you are going to face the
correct.
consequences.
Yeah.
So
So
thank you very much, Pujita ji. Thank you very much.
thank you, Mandarji.
Yeah, and
Thank you so
keep up
much.
your good work. Keep up your inspiring work.
Yes. To the viewers, we hope you enjoyed the show. And please subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. And share this content with your friends, family. Please comment freely and also like our video. And please keep coming back to Chitti. Namaskar.
Please remember to subscribe to us and switch on the notifications for this channel. For our other social media links, more content, and to support our work, please visit citti.net. Dhanyavad. Namaskar.